so delighted to welcome Chris Tompkins, who is one of our newest council members, and who, as they say, of course, needs no introductions. I mean, one of the greatest conservationists of our time, so famous for having moved from being CEO of Patagonia to jumping off the grid with her husband to form Tompkins Conservation and save vast areas of Patagonia and Chile and Argentina, initially through land purchase, and then after Doug's tragic death, Chris continued and forged even deeper ties with the governments of Argentina and Chile, and persuaded them to expand their national park systems in a way that I think no one thought was possible before that. So it's a great honor to have you with us today, Chris, and a great honor to have you as part of our council. Thank you.
I'm delighted to join the family, and I'm very happy to be here with Sophia Heinonen.
And I'll just say very briefly, we also have Sophia Heinonen, who is the CEO of Rewilding Argentina, one of the two other organizations that Chris co-founded, Rewilding Argentina and Rewilding Chile, which continue the work of Tompkins Conservation, but rooted in the two countries, and of the two countries in a way which is so appropriate these days. And for those of you who may not know, we have one ongoing project with Rewilding Argentina, which is the expansion of El Impenetrable National Park that Sophia will be mentioning, which I think was Rewilding Argentina's second project. And then just a month ago, our board approved our second project with Rewilding Argentina for a spectacular area of Yungas forest near in Argentina, but near the border with Bolivia, and you'll hear about that in a minute too. And actually, just this morning, I had the pleasure of signing the contract with Rewilding Argentina, so that's all forging ahead. Both of these projects are projects that you won't find on our website, because both of them involve highly confidential negotiations with landowners on the purchase of land. And of course, the last thing one wants to do is to advertise where the funds are coming from for such purchases. One really wants to keep it all very quiet and confidential until it happens. So neither project is yet on our website, but that hasn't prevented many of you, our donors, from supporting the El Impenetrable one. So thank you. And there will be now an opportunity to support the Yungas one as well. So super exciting. And for me, what a privilege to have the two of you here. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Well, I'm going to start out this conversation, and we hope it is truly a conversation with, this is me and my husband, Doug, with one of the few hundred baby anteaters that we have brought back and rewilded into the Iberá wetlands territory. I think there are now, we went from zero, quite emblematic in rewilding, we went from 0 giant anteaters in the Iberá drainage of nearly 2 million acres, and today there are more than 400 of them, broken into 4 separate completely free and independent
Populations.
Thank you, populations. So next, I think the next slide. Yeah. Let's orient ourselves just a bit. If you come down to the largest dark territory, this is Iberá National Park, and I'm going to talk a little bit about this because this is really the hub of the wheel of everything we're going to talk about today. This is subtropical wetlands. When Doug and I first visited Iberá, which was 1997, we were coming from the far south of Chilean Patagonia, think temperate rainforest, terrible weather, cold, and we were introduced to Iberá by someone who was hoping we might find this kind of conservation interesting. I couldn't stand it. We were there just for lunch. It was flat, it was buggy, it was super hot. And I thought, oh man, can we get out of here? But Doug saw something on that same day and snuck out a month later and came back to Buenos Aires and bought 155,000 acres in the middle of this extraordinary wetlands, which of course I've been eating crow for the last however many years that is. And this has become one of the principal projects over time, certainly when it comes to the number of species who were really extincted for an average 70 years. So the reason we're going to come back to this map occasionally throughout our conversation, but I will say that coming out of the Patagonia region, both in Argentina and Chile, and arriving to this gold mine of biodiversity really changed not only the kind of work we needed to do, but the kind of people we needed to find who could really take this on. These are not landscapes that we understood very well. And as luck would have it, Sofia Henonen, who's with us now, she's like the female version of my husband, Doug Tompkins. She has no fear. We've been working together for 22 years now. And she and Doug were really the ones who took on the vision of what needed to happen in Iberá, which was in its time absolutely unheard of. That is to say, all the political work, all the people who were stealing water illegally out of Iberá, making all of that go away. It's a complicated story, but the center of the story is how many species were left, very specifically the keystone species, and the three of us deciding, okay, we're going to commit to bring them back. And nobody had any idea how to actually make that happen. So Sofia was sort of has been the architect of, if you're looking at many species, jaguars, red-shouldered macaws, almost every class of species was missing. And we set to work over the last really about 18 years, bringing these species back one at a time. And you're going to hear about from Sofia where we are and all of that, but how we're refocusing yet again what it really means to rewild the planet. I just want to introduce you to Sofia personally. We just finished a 6-week, it was almost like army maneuvers between Brazil, Argentina, and Chile. So we're both coming off a very intense time and very happy to see her again this morning, and I'll pass it to you, Sofia.
Thank you very much, Chris. And well, going back to those times where we started with this idea of rewilding, it was completely new in the continent. It was not like North America or Africa. It was completely new to think about translocation in South America. And we have this idea of bringing back species like the jaguar in a province that was a cattle ranching province. So we know the problems of top predators in those places. And we know that there were other species missing, all the big herbivores, all the anteaters, the big birds that disperse fruits. So we make a plan, and we started with anteaters, the one that Chris shows, but eventually things go well, basically because we work a lot in changing the economy. There was no tourism in Iberá, and when we saw that there was a need here we can show you this picture. This is how Iberá should look like if we want a complete and functional ecosystem. there's a need of all these species. But when we started, there were no peccaries over there, there were no jaguars, there were no giant otters, there were no tapirs, pampas deers. There were a lot of missing species. And now, after 20 years, we have all of them. And this was a big change of perception, that we can really change the way we work in Argentina. It's not only about protection, but there's a need of restoration. This country, Argentina, is a very flat country, so it was colonized all over. And that means we have a very big impact in the Aboriginal cultures, and at the same time in many keystone species of the nature of Argentina. So there's a need in this country and many countries of South America that they were colonized like 400 years ago, to bring back this community well-being, and to bring back these species to make all these ecoregion healthy again. So that was our mission. And I think today we can say very proudly that with all the communities, we work in a very good relationship, and with all the Correntinos, that are people very brave, and they really love to be called jaguars, because they feel they are jaguars. We have the good news that we already have a wild population of jaguars from 0 to 20, 22 probably in Iberá, and we will see a little video that will show you that these first female that we release have already cubs. I can show you a little video there where we saw the first one giving birth in wild. That is Marihuá, and that was their cubs playing in the forest of Iberá. And this video basically is to tell you a tiny story about what happened with this cub. That one was a female and one was a male. The father was Jatobacino. Jatobacino was a male that was translocated from Pantanal. It was the first male that the Brazilian gave to Argentina, and was the male, because at the very beginning we only released 2 females and a male. So it was the one that gave birth to many, many tiny cubs. And now one of these cubs, it's already a sub-adult, have almost 2 years, and it started moving towards Paraguay. So we think that eventually this population can also help to restore the jaguars in Paraguay. It's the nearest country, and they're moving north. So we know that this population that is in the very center of Argentina is key for the restoration of not only Argentina, but Paraguay. So that is the idea, and we will go back to the map, that when we restore an ecosystem, we also start restoring the whole basin, because all these places are linked by these huge rivers. This is Bermejo River. We are seeing a picture of Impenetrable. That is our second big project that we are working since 12 years now. Iberá we started working 24 years ago. Now this is our second project that is 12 years ago. We started there. We aim to protect like 128,000 hectares. And now we are with Rainforest Trust and other organizations. We are trying to buy the north bank of the river, that is Formosa. You can see it in the picture where the light is shining on the back. That is a piece of land we are willing to buy to really protect both sides of the river. This place is incredible. It's the Chaco, but the dry Chaco is one of the most endangered ecoregions of Argentina, Paraguay, and Bolivia. And we need there a big park, because it's it's a stepping stone between the Yungas, that is a cloudy forest on the Andes, and Iberá, that is in the center of Argentina. So this project here is like 400 kilometers from the other. And for us is the opportunity to have a second model of our work in Iberá. We call it a model because it's not only about protection, creating parks, but also restoring the keystone species, developing this idea of rewilding through translocation between areas that are healthy and could give animals to the places where needs to be restored, and also because it's our new proposal of an economy, a regenerative economy for the well-being of local communities. In this place, there are not only criollos, that is people that came and mixed with the Aboriginals, and they were here colonizing 150 years ago, but also there are communities of the Wichis and the Quoms that are the original people that live in the place. So we work with three of them, and we aim to include them and have an opportunity for have some incomes through ecotourism at the same time to avoid deforestation. This is a place where deforestation and clear cutting the forest is very, it's speeding up, and we need to stop this idea and bring other alternatives for the people that live there. So that's why we call it a model, because in Iberá we could prove that this is possible, and we are bringing all the experience we have developed in Iberá and bring our know-how to Impenetrable. As I said, we already protect one of the riverbanks, the Chaco side, and we need to increase the protection towards Formosa. But we are at the same time working on bringing back the jaguar and bringing back the giant otter. We are also willing to bring back the marsh deer that was poached in many years ago, and it was completely extinct. And also the pampas deer that is related to the grasslands, that here they were very damaged by the cattle. It's not the grasslands here are very not so big and immense as in Iberá. So they're the ones that is a habitat that is more in danger in this place, and we are willing to restore it. So if you can go to the next picture. There you can see that there are some corrals. This corral is for giant otter and for a breeding center for jaguars. In both cases, we are, at this moment, we are moving animals from Iberá, from the breeding centers that we have in Iberá, to also start a new population of giant otters and jaguars here. The only difference between here and Iberá is that we know that there are males. There is at least one male of giant otter that have came during the pandemic. It was a surprise because in Argentina, the giant otter was completely extinct in the 80s. And now we have the surprise of having one male appearing in Impenetrable. And that gave us a push forward to start the project, bringing females in order to anchor that male and start a new population. And also we have males of jaguars that we know that they are coming from Yungas, from the Salta, from the border, from the Andes in the border of Bolivia, because, and there's at least two males that we know and we collar them, but there are no females. For the last 20 years, there were no females in the area. So all the males that appear were poached because they continue walking and walking, trying to find females, and they couldn't. And eventually they get into trouble and they were poached. So we try a new strategy here. That is, we brought females from Iberá. Those males were anchored, and they stay around the corrals. And eventually when the females were in a hot period, we opened the corrals and let the males get in and copulate with the females that were not allowed to be released because they came from zoos. But we could have some calves that were bred in a way that we know that we can release them. And the good news here is that we have actually released the first female that came from Paraguay. This was a wild female that Paraguay have donated to Argentina with this idea of helping between countries to revive. And we have just released the first female like 2 weeks ago. And there is a second female to be released. That is one of the cubs that we produced between the male and the female that was in captivity. So we know that this is moving fast, much faster than we could imagine at the very beginning. But Chaco province, the governor, is really happy to announce this new project in Argentina. Is the second one. And if we can move forward in the next picture, we can show there that we have been doing a lot of investment and a lot of courses for the community. So we can also start with this new proposal of sightseeing these big mammals, the tapir, the big armadillos, and all these big species, big mammals that will be roaming free and not much time, like the jaguar and the giant otter. So here we have more than 180 entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurs that are really have some incomes through this new economy. And we are working with at least 600 families that are all willing to participate in this new proposal. Well, next. Well, and this picture is to show you that we are not staying lazy with these two projects only. We know that we need to continue towards the Andes because this river, the Bermejo River, is the upper basin is in the Yungas, and we need, because all the jaguars, the males are coming from here, we need to also work within a vision that can link this ecoregion, the Yungas, with the dry Chaco and with the humid Chaco. And eventually, we also wanted to go towards the Atlantic forest and to the coast of Brazil. We know that through Argentina, we can go from west to east, and all these ecoregions are linked between them, and there's no borders between these ecoregions, and because there's a big rivers that go through, there's a natural corridor for all this wildlife, and we need to really work towards the protection
do we have the map again to illustrate what you're saying? Oh, here it is. Great.
There we go. Yeah.
Yes.
James.
So there you can see in green, we painted the rivers. We painted from the west up there. You will see a Baritum that is in orange. That is a place we have just signed an offer letter for buying that piece of property. Tiny, but it's not so tiny because it's in between two parks, the Baritum National Park and the Pintascayo Provincial Park. So that property of 5,000 hectares is linking two protected areas and will allow us to work there as we work in Iberá and as we are working in Impenetrable, and make that place to be the third stepping stone of this corridor. Yungas is is another ecoregion, is much more biodiverse, and this ecoregion goes from Tucumán in the south towards Peru in the north. But in Argentina, there are a lot of missing species, and we are willing to rewild the place, not only with jaguars, not only with giant otters, as we are working in Impenetrable and Iberá, but also bring back the keystone species of Yungas. And that means we are willing to work with the spectacled bear, and we are willing to work with the sloth that were extinct in Argentina since more than 50 years or more. So we know that this is a new challenge, but buying this property will be key for really scale up. We were thinking with Chris that our experience in Iberá went so well that we need to continue. There's a need for continuing because the jaguars are dispersing, because we know that this model will be the model to reconnect this southern Paraguay-Paraná basin towards the rest of the continent. This is an area that was very fragmented by agriculture, but it's time to think how we will reconnect South American cone with the rest of the continent.
You know,
So-
Sophia, if I can inject something in the Baritu property, which is about 10,000 acres, just to emphasize, these are pristine. This is pristine forest. There's not even a road into this heartlands of these complex forests. And when I asked Sophia, how do we laterally expand the work along the rivers, staying in Argentina, but how to do it laterally? She said there is one place in Baritu, in the western section, that is a must, and one over in Misiones close to Iguazu. And I said, well, let's go see what's happening with those very specific places. So this property that she's talking about in Baritu is the place for reconnecting Argentina and new species out into this idea she'll explain in a minute. And it was just a chance of a lifetime that it happened to be with one owner, and an owner who was willing to sell. So I just want to inject that. It was very opportunistic.
You know, Chris, I went there when I was 25, like 30 years ago. I was making my biologist thesis, and I went through the rivers towards Baritu, because Baritu National Park have no access from Argentina. The only way to get there is through the rivers, walking for 1 month more or less. And I remember this tiny property in the middle of nowhere that have a private owner at that time. And I don't know why nobody could buy that property. It was never for sale. But when we started thinking about this tragedy, we say, well, better go and see what is happening there. And that the owner of that time have already died, and the sons were willing to have some money from that property. So they were at the beginning of a concession for taking all the wood for making a clear cut of the place and open a road. So it was just a coincidence and a good timing that we could stop that.
Yeah.
We could start the negotiation for buying this piece of land that, as you said, is key because it's linked to Bolivia and have this continuity along the Andes towards Bolivia. And so we could stop that. And now we have to pay, and we have already signed an offer letter that should be buy. The property should be paid and buy in June.
In June, yeah.
Thanks to Rainforest, we already have this commitment for the 50% of the amount of the property, and we have at least 2 months to fundraise for the other 50%. But I think it's key that we can buy that property and stop the threats there, because it was
no question.
We're super excited, and we'll actually we'll send out a thank you to everybody who came to the webinar, was invited. which has the brief 2-page prospectus about this
Oh, great.
project. So super
Yeah.
exciting.
Somewhere, as somebody is, or as a team, we've bought a lot of land in the last 30 years, but this one is somewhere between serendipitous and a miracle.
Yes. completely.
I'm not sure which way to go on that, but yeah.
And,
Anyway.
How are we doing on time, Sophia? I do want to leave a little bit of time for
Yes.
questions.
Oh, yeah.
Well, to better explain the corridor, our idea is to these 4 stepping stones that we were talking about, the Baritú, the Impenetrable, Iberá, and eventually Iguazú, for us are the main arcs where in the future we will want to rewild from there, giving individuals to start new populations along the corridor. So there you can see how all these dots represent other protected areas or private or communal territories that they are willing to restore and reintroduce species. And we are willing to offer donations of individuals to restore the whole corridors, and that these new parks that we are talking about became the source of animals to make this scale-up idea of rewilding.
Is your vision that the combination of the rivers themselves and animals like the otters can migrate on the rivers, but also perhaps the fringing vegetation along the edges, that eventually you can link all of this together for natural migration?
Yes, we know the rivers are actually they are allowing some species to move between all these areas, as the jaguars and the giant otters, but there are others that we need to restore it and to make stepping stones that are not so far away between these huge parks, and we need to restore like populations in between, because the dispersion of some animals is not so big as in jaguars or giant otters, that they can move for thousands of kilometers, giant otter, and for hundreds of kilometers the jaguars. But for instance, the anteater, their migration is like for 50 or 100 kilometers. So we need to restore stepping stones areas in between. And the idea is that the animals came from the source of individuals to do that will come from these huge areas that we are working. So this is just a graphic, but it represents the vision of the stepping stone corridor. We have a little video that we want to show you. That is our vision that we were thinking with Chris, and we make this tiny video to share with you.
Yeah.
So you can understand what was the idea.
You know, I'm reminded that whenever you have success with something, especially when it comes to rewilding, you have no choice but to keep going and expanding the boundaries of what's possible.
We have come a long way to find a new path, not the highway leading to a planet of hollow shapes, to a stage with no actors, but a different path leading to a world of wholeness and symbiotic play, a world of beauty, a path signaled by the tracks, the flight, the roar of those who have returned from the brink of extinction. The time has come for taking the next big step in rewilding South America. During the last 20 years, Iberá was successfully revitalized through the reintroduction and translocation of keystone species, such as top predators, big herbivores, and seed dispersers. Today it has become a pulsing heart flowing upstream through the Bermejo River to the west, where the dry Chaco forest climbs until reaching the misty sub-Andean streams, to the Paraguay basin, where the undulating waters meet the flooded jungles of Pantanal, and up the upper Paraná River, whose rapids spin until arriving at the breathtaking spectacle of the Iguazu Falls. A South American corridor will harness the natural role of rivers as wildlife bridges. The corridor will connect complete and fully functioning ecosystems by establishing populations of endangered species. Most importantly, it will build strong transboundary partnerships, stretching through and beyond the horizons of northern Argentina to Bolivia, Paraguay, and Brazil. This is more than an act of resistance to the current trend of extinction. This is a quest for resilience, a journey forward into nature, a fund for permanent rewilding. Together we can weave back the wild fabric that once held South America as one.
Well, this is, I think
Okay.
for the moment, this is basically the idea, and we are working on it. We have been doing a trip with Chris towards Brazil, Paraguay, and Bolivia to try to have an open invitation to NGOs that are working there, also to donors and to people from government, and we are really launching this idea and seeing what can we do apart from Argentina to help the other countries to join this idea of rewilding South America.
Thank you.
How inspiring. Thank you. And how lovely to end on that wonderful video. I hope it came through as well to everybody at home that as it did to me. Let me start by asking a question mainly to Chris, but also to you, Sophia. So when Doug and you started out, Chris, you were attracted, it seems, I've seen the movie, so it must be true, right? To the Southern Cone and the vast expanses of relatively intact, relatively unpopulated by humans, wild nature. And I think no one expected you to be able to save so much of it. But the focus there, it seems, was primarily, maybe there was some rewilding, but it was primarily on preservation of vast, intact, wild landscapes.
When
And
we
you-
first started,
Go
when we got started, we started in an area called Pumalin. It ended up being over 1 million acres of temperate rainforest. So think BC, Colombia, or New Zealand. It's cold, it's on coastal, and impenetrable largely. So in that moment, we were still two people who grew up in the US Park Service, not Park Service, National Park System. So we were thinking we were land-based. And also in Pumalin, as far as we could tell, there were small patches of forest which had been logged, but less than 0.5%. So we weren't thinking about rewilding in the term that we use today. We really got started when we started working down in the Patagonia grasslands. And though they look healthy, 150 years of intensive, largely sheep grazing across almost the entire Patagonia steppe grassland ecosystem absolutely denuded that territory. So there was restoration in terms of taking livestock off, letting grasslands begin to bring themselves back where they could. But we also ran into a species over in Chile and Patagonia, the Huemul deer, nearly extinct, only found in Chile and Argentina. So there were smatterings of this kind of work. The recognition that 100 years of livestock grazing had kicked the bejesus out of standing populations of carnivores, puma, foxes, cougars, foxes. But it wasn't until we got to Iberá, and you heard the kind of the short story earlier, that we really understood, good God, I mean, there are so many territories that will never function properly unless keystone species are brought back. And again, nobody was really looking at that in that particular way. We went to South Africa, we went all over looking, how do you learn what it means to bringing back extincted species? How do you move them around? So it was a soft start when what we today look at rewilding. But I think one thing we always have to remember is you can't do any of this unless you can't paint a masterpiece unless you have the canvas. And so we never give up on amassing large-scale territories upon which we restore grasslands or forests. We bring back species that have gone extinct. So sometimes people think we're just rewilding. No, we're still very much understanding that unless we have these large-scale territories, we can't really do what's needed.
Sophia, do you want to add anything?
Well, Iberá took a time because there was no source of animals. As I said, in South America, you cannot, as in Africa, you cannot go and knock the door to the neighbor game ranch or nature conservancy. Here, we need government to give us permission, and that is basically what is happening in South America. Governments are not ready yet, and procedures are not there to translocate animals between national parks or protected areas. That is all new, and it took us a long 20 years to have all these government permissions to move species and to get Brazil, Paraguay, Uruguay to give us the first jaguars, and that's why we think that one of our experience should be to scale up this know-how and to work much more with government so we can really think about restoring this huge basin. Paraná-Paraguay basin is almost as big as the Amazon, but is much more needed for restoration. So that is what we learned in Iberá, and we are willing to have all this experience given to Paraguay and Brazil and also Bolivia.
Super. No, I mean, it's interesting to see your trajectory towards places with potentially higher biodiversity as you go north, but also more damaged, and so more in need of restoration. Oh, fascinating. People have started to ask some questions, so maybe we'll take a few of those. One is apropos of what we were just discussing prior to the seminar, which was how do you get into Paraguay, and where is Rewild Paraguay in all of this?
Well, we went there. We have a very good relationship with the government of Paraguay. We work with the Minister of Environment there. They have some problem with jaguars. In the Atlantic forest of Paraguay, within the east, there's almost none jaguars. The only place you can see some jaguars is very north in the Maracaju National Park. There's 10 individuals left, but on the Chaco side, the Paraguay, the country, they have problems with jaguars that are roaming, and they have conflicts. And so we work together with the government to help there, and they are willing to make some restoration, but it's very new for them. So it's one of the countries that we need to work much more and see how the NGOs there respond to this idea.
Great. And we were just brainstorming before about some contacts
Yes.
that might reach right up to the top there. So
No, that's a
that
huge
works.
contact, James. So
Fingers crossed. Other people, someone is asking about whether you have a challenge of poaching in these areas and how you deal with that.
Yes, we have that challenge. what we do in these areas is just to transform to present new ideas of new economy, and this is nature-based tourism, and it's really a very good idea because local people they have to migrate to big towns to have jobs, and if you can bring some tourism to the place, not huge amount, we are not never thinking about massive tourism, but very people interested in bird watching and also mammals watching, and we work with them towards this kind of new proposal, and that really in Iberá worked a lot. They were all hunters and poachers, and now they are all really good guides, and they can show you all the species, and they're very proud of what they have, the natural value of the place.
I think the other thing with Iberá poaching, which is Sophia said was pretty prevalent. Sophia and Doug also looked at this almost 2 million acre and figured out where are the key entrances for poachers to get in and get out their catch. And so in principle, beyond buying the big pieces, we were buying up areas that were up for sale in those kind of shutting down the possibility of getting in and getting out very easily. I mean, that was over time, but you're always looking at.
I mean, when you guys came to us with the El Impenetrable National Park extension project, I, from my experience in Africa, immediately recognized that having a large government protected area bounded by a large river and then no protection on the other side is completely hopeless, because the river is, of course, a highway for people, good people and bad people. And if you have no way to protect the other bank, it's very easy for people to sneak across the river in the middle of the night. So I wasn't surprised that a critical need to protecting El Impenetrable National Park is locking up the other bank of the river.
Yes, yes. And we see, because we have the jaguar collars, and every day they cross the river towards Formosa. So they're using both sides of the river every day, and we always cross fingers that nobody poach them on the other side. No? So it's really urgent to buy that piece.
And I see from your map that in principle, someday this connectivity would extend all the way up to the Pantanal as well in Brazil and Paraguay and Bolivia.
Yes, that's the idea, and we have good partners that are working up in Pantanal. They are trying. They came to visit us because usually in Pantanal they were all national parks, but you know, in Brazil there's not so strong law enforcement to the national parks. It's more private conservation. So there's some partners there that are willing to buy properties along the Paraguay basin and work towards also translocate animals into Paraguay, because in the middle there's Paraguay, as we said, and the Paraguay needs to recover their population of giant otters and jaguars towards the south. So with the Brazilian in the Paraguay and the Pantanal, we can both south and north restore the middle.
Very good. Someone is asking about ecotourism, but I think you've spoken quite a bit about developing ecotourism and involving local people.
Local communities. It's a community-based nature tourism. We always try that the entrepreneurs, local entrepreneurs, are the one who benefit of this proposal. We help a lot so they can have their own hotels, their own tiny boat trips or canoes, or because that's the way they really stay. They don't migrate to big cities, and they also became much more proud of their culture. So we know that this is a key work to do, is to protect culture and to also include them, and so they can be communal entrepreneurs.
And someone else asks about the other big stakeholder, which is government. How do you engage with government, and how do you persuade government? And of course, both of you have a long history of this and many lessons to teach the rest of us.
So, and as Chris have been saying, we have been working with, I don't know, 12 presidents in
Just
Argentina.
met our 12th president, when I guess that was 3 weeks ago, Sophia. Yes.
Yeah.
You have
Oh.
to start at the top and go all the way to the local mayor.
Yes, we need to work with the mayors, with the governors. Argentina is a federal country, so you need to work with the governors and the president, and basically National Park Service and what is the Provincial Park Service, because they are the main partners of this vision. But it took time because, as I say, procedures are not in place to make these kind of movements, because they were all worry about traffic and zoos and all the bad things about moving animals. But we know that in the future we will need to move animals towards restoration. You know, we were saying the other day that 96% of the biomass of mammals in the world is humans and cattle. So if there's only 4% of wildlife mammals that is living in the wild, we will need to increase that amount of biomass and species. And that is, we will need to restore and translocate and rewild for sure.
Both of you are extraordinary for your ability to plan extraordinarily ambitious strategies that seem impossible at the time. And most of us mere mortals are discouraged by the negative things we see happening, by the setbacks, by the negative conservation stories that we read every day. Do you have an answer to that? I mean, what gives you hope and optimism to drive forward so aggressively, and how can the rest of us become more like you?
Well, I'll start out by saying, in the short term, it is very hard to find optimism. And by short term, I mean the next 30 years or so, 30 to 50 years. But I will say, I believe in the power of black swans, you know, in the economic world, that we would never stop doing what we're doing. In fact, we're pushing so hard to expand it because we don't know what those invisible tipping points are. And I always remind people, 2 weeks before the Berlin Wall fell, nobody could have imagined that. And these things happen. And so that's one point. And the second point is, why would you stop? Because in the absence of working in some form, it's a kind of abdication. It's an abdication of your own future and those of others, regardless of what species you're thinking about. And also,
the other thing I will say is, Doug and Chris, they are entrepreneurs. No, they came from business, and so they think they can really do things. They are do people. I'm more a biologist. I came from science. I work in the government. And when you work in the government, it seems like you cannot do anything. So you need sometimes people that came from business and they are entrepreneurs, and they say, why not? Go ahead, push yourself into the, so that is important also.
But here's something shocking, even to the two of us, and if Doug were alive, I think he would find it astonishing. Even Yvon Chouinard finds this a little astonishing, that when Sophia and I started thinking about this, and Sophia really put together what was possible, and we just decided, we just like the little video you all saw, we're committing to this, because even if it's 2 million acres, eventually, if you don't expand, those jaguars, all the species we're working with, they're going to come up against a ceiling, regardless of, you can't look at these islands, even the big ones, as the long-term strategy. And I have to say, as we have been telling people about what we're moving to, besides everything that is happening on the ground day to day in Argentina and over in Chile, expanding out like this, the response to it has been so shocking because it's really like, of course, oh, of course, this is what has to happen with conservation of territory, but also rewilding, building back the ecological infrastructure. And this has been so surprising to me that I haven't talked to one person, Sophia can speak for herself, that have said, oh, that seems too big, it seems too aggressive. They just see the logic in this. They know it's 15, 20 years out that you really begin to see, I think it's going to be faster, but nevertheless. So this really tells me, I think we're all onto something, that there's a logic to this, even with people who aren't dealing with it every day. And that's been inspiring.
We're coming to the end of our time, but first of all, I just want to thank both of you for allowing us to be part of this extraordinary journey that you're on. It's a privilege to travel with you, even for part of that journey. And of course, inspiring to us as we think about our own roles in conservation, whether we're donors or whether we work in the field. So thank you so much. And also, thank you to all of you who've come today. We're so grateful for your commitment to this mission that we share with Tompkins Conservation and Rewilding Argentina. We're so grateful for the time and the interest and the passion that you bring. And of course, we're also grateful for the financial support, which makes possible all of this. So as I say, these are not fundraising events, but we'll send out a prospectus about the latest Rewilding Argentina project that will connect up to Bolivia and the Andes and the Yungas. But again, thank you for sharing your vision with us, and we look forward to wonderful things as we go forward together. Thanks.
Thank you to everyone.
Yes.